Okay, my name is JT Telford, and I will be talking about my conflict and mediation project today, discussing the negotiation timeline through real-world experiences. Today we're going to be talking about going through the negotiation timeline through an example conflict. Here the kind of overview of the negotiation timeline, a little bit about we're going to start with a little bit of the conflict and background of the conflict, and kind of going through the parties and their motivations. Then we're going to go start into the negotiation timeline with emotions. Then we'll move to positions, interest, agenda setting, options, feasibility, movement, and finally closure. So for conflict and background, Jason is a freelance photographer. He works with a medical company called Lumix to do their marketing work and updating their website periodically. There was a meeting scheduled last month for some shots to be done. Jason has multiple clients he works for besides Lumix because their work together is periodically once a month. The communication between Lumix's marketing team and Jason has been pretty minimal, and Jason is frustrated frequently because their expectations for him when he shows up to their offices is rarely clear or what he is planning on. To a little bit more context, because I wanted to talk about each of these slides and not just have a bunch of paragraphs in here. Jason also... A part of this marketing team is they're not clear with their communication to him, and he usually shows up and they need photography and then something more, and then they pile on as well. There was a meeting that was planned last month for Jason to come in and shoot profile photos and was moved to a different time, so Jason missed the meeting. Lumix is frustrated with the lack of accountability on Jason's part, and Jason is frustrated with the lack of more communication and expectations from Lumix. So let's get into the negotiation timeline as the mediator then. Emotions. It's clear that there are things that both parties want to change in their relationship in a few different ways, as well as maybe change expectations, as well as how that relationship would change in the future. What are the initial emotions felt by Jason in this moment? He obviously missed the meeting and may feel some embarrassment as well as remorse for putting a good client's team in a bad spot with falling behind on quotas or falling behind on their marketing plans. What are the emotions from Lumix's team? They may feel angry at Jason for missing the meeting, but hopefully they can also understand that they didn't notify or have a great extensive communication pattern with him in the past as well. So what are the mediation ideas? If you're the mediator, each of these slides in my presentation will have some mediator ideas that we will go through as if we were the mediator. Some maybe a fun, a couple ideas, or so to speak, or just some more context to the mediator side of things. So in this moment in the mediation, letting both parties express their initial thoughts and feelings about the situation in their own words is most important. Clarifying questions may be helpful, but letting the initial statements from both parties lay the groundwork for your next steps will be key. Examples of how we may see this step in the negotiation timeline is Jason may express that he is sorry or not for missing the meeting, but likely will mention an initial statement that Lumix's communication with him has been lackluster and he has not paid to be their marketing strategy, nor is he obligated for being ready at all times and available at all times when they make a sudden change to the schedule. Lumix's team will likely express their frustrations that Jason missed the meeting and didn't respond promptly that he was going to be there or not. They are now behind on onboarding new employees and implementing a marketing strategy, and Jason, in their eyes, has violated their contract with them by not showing up to this meeting. Positions. This part of the negotiation timeline, both parties are looking for reform. It is likely that Lumix chose Jason after a search for good photography work and media work, and Jason chose Lumix for the pay and expanding his portfolio of work. This is the basis for a mediation to take place. Jason wishes for Lumix to have better communication and more extensive plans for when he shows up. He wants to be more involved or more informed of Lumix's marketing strategies and how his work will fit into that plan. Lumix wants Jason to be more readily available and contactable, or in contact when they are onboarding people or need work to be done in their marketing strategies. Lumix also likely wishes that more of Jason's time could be spent on them so that their marketing plans could be more flushed out and their media would work better. So as the mediator, we'll now kind of look into how we can establish these positions and how we can use this part of the negotiation timeline to help with the other parts. So reading into the positions of both parties and speaking with both parties is an important step in the negotiation timeline. In this particular conflict, understanding the main conflict is the most important. Obviously, it's a communication issue between both parties. They're both expressing a position and an interest in a way that is they're expressing an interest in change in the way that they communicate and operate. Highlighting that point in both parties' positions will be important in bringing them together later in the timeline stages. Positions and interests often are grouped together. Interests are usually the why behind someone or a party's position. So let's dive deeper into the why. In this particular context and conflict, there's a couple questions that we can ask if the interests are not particularly or explicitly stated. Why was there a communication breakdown? Why did Jason not see the new meeting that was scheduled? What are the repercussions of not having the photos and new employee marketing done for Lumix? Each of these questions may be answered by the parties themselves, but they can be important clarifying questions as well if the parties don't get there on their own in terms of an initial statement or just asking them about their positions. As the mediator in this particular conflict, it may be beneficial to have a caucus or again establish a single speaker moment, meaning something like having one party speak, and if another party has something to say, they can write it down and go back and forth. Jason may work with competitors of Lumix, and their marketing strategies may be proprietary. So in terms of positions and interests, they may be keeping some stuff close to the chest on both sides, so they don't hurt their business further by. Obviously, it's confidential in this setting, but. Leaving a mediation, it wouldn't be used in a court of law. It would be used to gain a business advantage. So looking into interest and being conscious of that caucus may be needed, also should be in the mediator's mind. In the same vein, if a caucus is not needed, letting the parties express their reasoning and their why behind their positions may be helpful for the other party to see the other side's perspective and become more keen on a mutually beneficial solution. So if a caucus or if proprietary needs do not need to be addressed, then letting the parties kind of express their interests to each other may be more helpful than you as the mediator interfering in that. Obviously, we're trying to establish a better connection and communication between the parties, and that is the main goal. So if their interests you can see some empathy beginning to grow between both as they express interest, then that may be more beneficial than interfering and trying to establish or get your questions in there, so to speak, for them to be answered. Next is agenda setting. So in this particular conflict, now that the positions and interests have been established, it is now time as the mediator for the main issues to be mentioned and addressed by the parties. There are a few strategies that can be used to create the agenda. For this conflict in particular, I would say that the interests, in the interest phase, from the interest phase, we have three solid points of order: communication, expectations of work, and expectations of availability. As the mediator, the agenda setting for this conflict has a lot to do with communications and expectations. Don't be afraid to add subpoints and additional topics to each of the agenda items as they pertain further legitimize a focus on a solution. So if a subpoint if subpoints feel like they're exhaustive or redundant, they can be wrapped up as well. So what I mean by that is, in communication, you may go into the specific ways that you want to communicate and then the specific strategies for communication, and that can be mixed in with options as well. And so that you may want to wrap up subpoints like that into just communication and just keep it up there instead of spraying that out into multiple agenda items. Making sure to let the parties work through each of these, make sure to let the parties work through each of these, and don't be afraid to let them add agenda items that are pertinent. However, this is not the phase for options and potential solutions. So if it gets into a conversation, especially in a time like this where they're probably familiar with each other and the way they speak to each other, fair enough. It can lead into options and then wanting to look into feasibility of these options, and we're just trying to set the agenda first. So making sure to stay on track with that is important. Next, options. So now hopefully each agenda item that has need to be discussed has been noted. In this conflict, it is hopefully likely, that both parties are interested in an option to better their communication and give and take a little bit in terms of getting to a better working relationship. Examples of options that they may suggest or you may suggest is having a call or separate correspondence about upcoming meetings. There may be an option to further discuss the expectations of Lumix employees when they shoot with Jason and what deliverables Jason will be creating for Lumix. There may be an option to further discuss what Jason is being paid for explicitly, and what are his available hours, and what communication is needed on both sides to feel confident about meeting expectations. As the mediator, generating options is well and good for you as the mediator if the parties cannot come up with any themselves. It also may be a good idea to have a set of clarifying questions that can bring about options from the parties themselves. Like, how would you like Lumix to tell you they have changed a meeting, like to Jason? Or to Lumix, how would you like Jason to confirm the marketing plan and shoot plan with your team in the future? And for both, what is the ideal outcome for this working relationship moving forward? Each one of these questions is it's in the mediator's wheelhouse, so to speak, to ask these questions as options are being generated so that those options can come from the parties themselves. Again, bringing them back into the way or back into the path towards a solution. Next, feasibility. Now is the time for both parties to evaluate the ability to execute on the options presented. In this conflict, I'm going to imagine that both parties want to continue the relationship and that litigation was on the table very briefly, if at all. So that being said, if both parties don't see feasibility in the options presented, then it may be beneficial to establish once again why they choose to work together, and if they want to keep working together at all. As the mediator, it will be paramount that if options are being agreed upon, that you don't interrupt if you have another solution. The parties are there to create better communication between themselves, and slowing that process may be more detrimental than the option presented is helpful. That is a lot of word vomit that sounds there, but what this essentially means is in a place like this where options are being presented and both parties want to work together, it's highly likely that they're going to look into feasibility pretty quickly on a lot of these options, and that is much more beneficial than or establishing them getting back into a better communication and building up that communication muscle, so to speak, rather than if you see an option not being discussed, bringing that option up instead for looking into feasibility. For this example, in conflict, feasibility is fairly simple. If Jason can loop in Lumix's team to his schedule and the way that he likes to operate, then Lumix can work with him to make sure their onboarding and communication with him is more efficient and more attractive to potential clients. As the mediator, it will be paramount that if options are being agreed upon, that you don't interrupt, kind of like I said before, if you have another solution. The parties are there to create better communication between themselves, and slowing that process may be more detrimental than an option being presented is helpful. So it is also important at this time to listen and try to once again understand through the lens of positions and interests. If one party is opposed to an option, why? This will help in the movement step next. So what I mean by that is to say, think back. Your notes should give you a little bit of the positions and interests of both parties. If they are against an option, why? Why are they against that option? Why are they against the feasibility of that option? It may help you get back to positions and interests and help you come up with a solution or better understand their position. So when you get to movement, you can help them move in ways that will be beneficial for both sides. Next is movement. In this conflict, movement may may look more like commitments to the new working relationship and commitments to accountability, meaning they're not going to, these two parties are not going to go to litigation, nor are they dealing with a lot of money per se, or a lot of contracts and whatnot, and rights being owed. It's more, what does the future of our relationship look like, and what are we going to do to make this work? And so for Jason, it may look like checking in every week to Lumix and making sure that they are still on track for a meeting or for media to be going out or be delivered. For Lumix, movement may look like a new commitment to communicate better with Jason and give better descriptions of what they are looking for in his work every month and the uses they will have for his work as well. In the lens of the mediator, movement a lot of times is a mirror reflection of the interest step, kind of like I talked about before in the feasibility, is an acknowledgement that the other party has interests, and in order to get what or some of what we need to help the other party get what they want as well. As the mediator, it is important that in the movement step that your questions and acknowledgement follow the interests and positions previously established. So kind of like I talked about before, but your questions and your acknowledgements should follow the positions and interests that they have discussed before, just so you're moving towards the solution together and you're not throwing in other positions or other interests that you think they may have. Make sure your questions are on top of on top of their positions and on top of their movement towards a solution. Like if they're going down and they're close to a settlement or they're close to an agreement, and that you believe it's mutually beneficial, make sure you're moving with them. Your questions are on topic towards that instead of bringing back another option or another agenda item. Finally, a closure. This part of the mediation may look like a new agreement that both parties sign that has the new expectations as well as commitments that both parties have agreed to. It may be legally binding, or in this case, it is likely a page of accountability that could be referred to in the future for both parties. Jason and Lumix will continue their relationship and are committed to communicating better and becoming more extensive in their planning and effort level when it comes to their individual success together. And then you may highlight in the mediator's ideas, I talk about this, but you would highlight some of the things that they're going to commit to, which is more clear communication, understandable expectations of work, and a clear marketing plan. And then I have some signing lines down there as well. Drafting this document is not an obligatory action. It may just help both parties finalize their agreement and help provide professionalism and more clear communication for both of them. The most important piece in this closure step is to reaffirm the positive strides that both parties have made by coming to an agreement and mentioning once again the bullet points of the agreed upon details of that agreement. And so that is my project that we've gone through the negotiation timeline and talked about negotiation timeline in the lens of a real world example. Thank you for listening to this, and thank you for participating in my project. Thank you so much.